Let's go, let's go.
Give thanks from the bottom of your heart.
It's the little things.
Me tell you.
It's the little things. Give thanks.
Hey. So this is Little Things by Lamboginny, and today I'm going to walk you through my process, show you everything I've done for this record to achieve the quality that you're hearing in this record, and hopefully you can pick one or two things you can use in your own record. If you managed to watch the masterclass video I uploaded, I'm going to leave a link here if you haven't. I did a very detailed breakdown of how I work. So essentially, I just start by doing gain staging first and balancing the levels, get the music to sound as good as can possibly get, and then I go into EQing to shave up space and target some resonant frequencies that might be in some instruments before I move into compression. Let me just walk you through everything starting from the kick, okay? First thing we are doing here is obviously gain staging, and I'm using the trim plugin to turn down the level up to -8 dB just to create headroom for the processing we're going to do eventually. Live sounding kick because it's reggae music. By the way, reggae music is actually one of my favorite genres.
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head, food on my table.
Right, this is a proper reggae jam, man. The kick, very live sounding kick, and I'm using the EQ here to do a high pass up to 20 Hz. I'm not doing low pass as you can see, and that's because this kick actually has some information on the high frequencies. Let's listen to that. So let's pull up a filter real quick. As you can hear, right, you have sounds way up the frequency range, but that's why I'm not doing any low pass filter. Yeah, and then I'm doing the same thing for the rest of the instruments. This is a drum loop, I think. Yeah, right, again, high pass up to 20 Hz. All right, and then the rim shot, we're doing a high pass up to 95 Hz. I want you to look at something real quick. There's some low frequency information here, but let's see if we can hear it. See, we can't hear it, but even though we can't hear it, doesn't mean it's not occupying space. And that's why you do this shaving off unwanted frequencies so they can create space for the sounds that need to occupy that frequency range. But the key is to make sure you're not cutting into the sound. Do you understand what I'm saying? Else you will change the sound. And no producer wants you to do that to their music. All right, very important. Hi-hat. Right, the same thing, okay? High pass up to 159 this time around, and then I'm doing the same thing for everything else, you know, percussions and whatnot. A lot of instruments in this song, by the way, as you can see. It's a very nice, straightforward record. And then we have the bass. I'm not doing any gain staging. The level is great, but I'm doing a high pass filter here as well, up to 20 Hz just to round off that low end. Another reason why I'm actually filtering up to 20 Hz because I actually have a sub that lets me monitor down to 20 Hz. If you don't have a sub, I would say just do your cut around 30 Hz because a lot of sound systems don't go down to 20 Hz except those that have deep subs. So it's a safe space to be when you just do a cut around 30 Hz. That way, if there's any rumble that's below 30 Hz that you can't hear, the other person will not hear it because there's no information below 30 Hz technically. Do you understand what I'm saying? Me, I can hear if there's some annoying rumble below 30 Hz up to 20 because I have a sub that goes down to 20. You get? That's why I'm doing that. What else am I doing here? I'm doing some saturation with the newfangled saturate just to bring more life to the high mid frequencies of the bass so that the bass can cut through the mix a little bit more. So without it, you can hear it has more life, right? Without, on, right? Sounds very good, and this is a very easy plugin to use. You have your drive, you can crank that so you can hear what's like. This might actually be a sound that you're going for, but I'm not trying to do too much saturation, so I just set the drive to 3. And this plugin also has the auto gain feature, so it's like very easy to use if you don't want to worry yourself about balancing your levels. You know, it helps you do the auto balancing for you, which is aka gain staging essentially. Shout out to Newfangled Audio, by the way. They sent me this plugin and some of their other plugins, and they have very amazing plugins, man. I'm not even gonna lie to you. And then next thing we're doing here is some compression, but this is not just any compression. This is sidechain compression, right? So we're just sidechaining the kick to the bass to duck the bass for the kick whenever the kick hits, essentially. Let's listen to that. Right, you can see whenever the kick hits, the bass ducks. but I'm making sure the compression is very, very light. You can't even hear it. You actually just feel it. And it's very quick. I've set the release to 33 milliseconds and then the attack to 2 milliseconds is also very, very quick. And I've also set this to external band 1. What that means is I have localized the sidechain compression to all the frequencies below 200 Hz. So the kick is not affecting the frequencies above 200 Hz. So that way the kick has more presence, but then the bass also has presence as well. What else are we doing here? I think that's all. And then for the melodies, the same process. High pass filter to create space, take out what's not needed. And I think for some of this sounds, I'm doing a bit of, yeah, look at that. Some dynamic EQ in here to target resonant frequencies.
What you've done for me.
Essentially, as you can see, I've set that to minus 28 dB. So whenever it goes below minus 28 dB, the EQ is going to attenuate those resonant frequencies essentially. I think I've done that for some other of the sound, like this lead synth, because the synth has like a very sharp sound at some parts. Let's see. Right. Listen to that first one. That needed to be tamed before I get to compression and, you know, blow out somebody's ears. As you can see, I'm essentially just carving out space for every instrument within the mix. Like I mentioned before, if you look at the frequency range below 100, you can see that there's actually some information there, but we can't hear them. They're not audible. They're just taking space. You understand? That's why this is essential, because now we have created space for the instruments that need to occupy this frequency range, like the bass and the kick, or any other instrument that have low frequency information, essentially. Once I'm done gain staging, balancing, EQing, the next thing I usually do is the compression. As you can see, I've routed all the drums to the drum bus, and that's where I'm doing my compression. And I'm using the LA2 compressor for that. Let's listen to the drums and see what we're doing in terms of gain reduction. Yeah, I mean, just about 1 dB of gain reduction, just to squeeze the drums together and make it sound like one unit. All right, one thick unit. Apart from that, there's also something I'm doing, which is parallel drum compression to bring live to all the quiet information. As you can see, I've sent all the drum tracks to my drum bus, and I'm using the 1176 compressor for that. But actually, during my masterclass, somebody mentioned that I could have actually just done the send from the drum bus to the parallel drum bus, which is brilliant, which is actually how I'm doing it now for all the newer records that I work on. It's actually brilliant. Instead of doing one by one, you just send from here, because it's actually the same thing. Let's take off the parallel drum compression so we can see how it's affecting the drums. Without the parallel drum compression, and then on. Nice. You can hear how the shakers and the tambourines all come alive. This is a very great way to bring life to your drums in your mix, man. The bass, and I have routed that to my bass bus. Let's see what we're doing there. Also, I like to use opto compressor when I'm doing bus compression, because the attack time is very, very slow. You know, it's like 10 milliseconds, and that allows transients to cut through and just focuses on the tonal side of the sound. And that's exactly what I want when I'm mixing. This is a universal audio compressor, by the way. If you don't have this, you can use the CLA2A. Right. Exactly. So 1 dB of gain reduction to just tighten things up. And then for the melodies, I bet I'm doing the same thing as well. Personally, I usually just find that 1 dB of gain reduction just works. But sometimes I will go above that if I really want to get like a very nice compressed sound. Maybe especially for trap, right? Right, so with the melodies, we are going slightly above and below 1 dB of gain reduction essentially. But the main purpose of this compressor for the melodies is actually just amplify the sound. Because further down into the record where we don't have a lot of instruments, the compressor is essentially not necessarily compressing the sound, but mostly just amplifying the sound. So that's why I'm using this. Yeah, this is a very, very dope reggae record. By the way, this song is out. You can find it in Lamborghini's brand new EP, Co-Signed by God. I'm going to leave a link below in case you want to check it out, all right? So let's go over to the vocals.
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head, food on my table, clothes on my body, Lord, Lord, it's been you all along.
This is a very dope record. I like it a lot. So as usual, I don't do so much processing on the main track itself, just some gain staging and auto tuning and maybe anything that I need to do for that particular track. All right. So as you can see here, we just have the trim plugin, okay, to turn down the level up to what we're doing there. Minus 13 dB of gain reduction. Yeah, this vocal was very, very hot. They recorded it too loud, so I needed to create headroom. But I think this actually led me to
from the shoes on my feet.
About 14 dB. A lot of people recommend minus 18, but for me, that's more than enough for any of the processing I needed to do. So I just stopped there. And then I have the UAD auto tune. This auto tune sounds good for when you want the auto tune sound, but don't want to necessarily hear it. Because you can hear the auto tune sound, right?
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head.
But it's very transparent.
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head.
I mean, you can still achieve the same with any other auto-tune. You just have to dial the amount of auto-tuning that you want. But I just like this for lead vocals anyways. And then the rest of the processing, obviously, it's happening on the vocal bus, as you can see. Before we get there, I want to talk about this delay throw that you can see here. If you look.
Table, clothes on my body, Lord. Lord, it's been you all along.
Right, I think delay through is one of those special effects that you hear a lot in reggae music. I didn't exactly use it in a lot of places here, but it's very, very good when you want to emphasize certain parts of the music, like this.
I'll be lying if I told you I don't get worried sometimes, but I believe when
it's very, very dope, right? Listen.
It's the little things.
Me tell you.
It's the little.
Right, this is actually very easy to set up. I'm going to leave a link here in case you want to learn how to do this. I've done a very easy how-to video before on how to do this. But essentially what I'm using for that, I have my delay throw bus and I'm using the H delay. This is actually one of my favorite delays for delay throws. Anyways, when you watch the video, you see how to set this up, okay? Now, the very first plugin on my vocal chain is the NS1 suppressor, which essentially is a noise suppressor / gate plugin. But I've since changed, you know. I've started using the Clarity VX Pro. The next plugin here is a Kirchhoff EQ. Now, essentially, I'm using these to remove resonant frequencies from the vocals. Let's listen to what that sounds like. We're going to do a before and after and see if you can hear that difference. So without the EQ.
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head.
And then this is with the EQ.
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head.
Do you understand? It just cleans the vocal up just a little bit. And this is very important because the signal flow goes from the top to the bottom, which means when the signal gets into my DSR, it's going to be a lot cleaner. And when it goes from the DSR to the SSLE channel strip, it's going to also be a lot cleaner. You understand what I'm saying? So I am fixing issues first before I proceed to the main stuff like tone shaping with the EQ or compression, Kirchhoff EQ to remove resonant frequencies. But also, as you can see, I'm not doing too much essentially, right? I'm really just picking out the frequencies that I feel like are really annoying. And then let's go down to the next plugin, which is the DSR. Again, this is to target the S's, the sibilance, right? I've set this to capture sibilance from 3 kilohertz and up. Okay.
From the shoes on my feet.
Right, so that's essentially what we're doing there, just capturing sibilance. This leads us to the next plugin, which is the SSLE channel strip. This is a UAD version, but there's a Waves version as well. I've actually made a video recently about them and I'm going to leave a link here. Now, this is where the tone shaping kind of starts for the vocals, okay? I'm doing a boost up to... I can't necessarily tell you exact figures because with this UAD SSL, you don't exactly have the gain figures. You just use your ears to make the adjustment, which is actually quite cool. But we can say I'm doing a boost around maybe 2.5 dB here, around 16 kilohertz to add some brightness to the vocals. And then I'm doing a cut on the high mid frequency up to maybe -2 around 3K to target some sharpness. And I've set this to be a very wide Q. And then for the low mid frequency, I'm also doing a cut around, we can call this maybe like 750. Again, there's no exact number, so you have to kind of use your ears. But I'm doing a cut up to, let's call this -13 dB. I'm doing a very tight Q here. This is a low mid frequency and you don't necessarily want to take that off, because the low mid frequency is actually what our ears are mainly trained to recognize. All right, so it's very important. Actually, let me show you what I'm doing here. So I'm going to boost it so you can hear it. So
from the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head, food on my table, clothes on my body, Lord.
You can hear the difference. So that's what I'm taking out from that vocal essentially. And for the low frequencies, I'm doing a cut up to, let's call it again, minus 13 dB, around 200 hertz.
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head.
All of this cut essentially is the first important step that will help the vocals to sit properly within the mix.
Feet to the roof over my head. Food on my table, clothes on my body, Lord.
You know what, let's do before and after and see if this plugin is actually making a huge impact to the record. Okay, so I'm going to bypass it.
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head.
And then with it on.
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head. Food on my table, clothes on my body, Lord.
You can hear how amazing that sounds, all right? It's so fucking dope. This is a very important plugin. I'm gonna call you back. The second time you're interrupting my video, you're in this video as well. Alright, later. I'll call you once I'm done. Alright, yeah. Alright, so the next plugin on my vocal chain is the 1176 compressor. Now, this is the first compressor in my vocal chain because I like to compress in series. I don't like to just have one compressor doing all the heavy lifting, so I like to split it within two compressors. Anyways, the purpose of this first compressor is to target picks.
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head. Food on my table, clothes.
So you can see that's only when we get to the loud parts of his performance. Table, that's when the compressor goes ahead and grabs stuff. As you can see, I've set this to slow. This is Universal Audio 1176, by the way, and this is a revision AE version of the 1176 compressor. And one very important feature of this version is the fact that it comes with this slow mode. Now, this brings the attack time down to 10 milliseconds. All right, so it makes the compressor very slow. Even though technically this is a fast compressor, this kind of makes it slower. And for me, that's what I want, because I always want the transients to cut through. Again, this is just me. Some people will tell you no, but this is how I like to work. All right, so the 1176 compressor has a fixed threshold, so which means the more you drive the input, the more compression you're going to get. And I've set the ratio to 4:1, which is great for vocals. So that's that. Now the next plugin on the vocal chain is the C6 multiband compressor. This is a very important compressor on my vocal chain, like I've mentioned many times, because this is actually where I do like the final tone shaping for the vocals. I've split the crossover points like this. We have from 91 hertz and below to serve as a low. So let's listen to the before and after to see if we can hear the difference. So this is before.
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head.
And then after.
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head. Food on my table, clothes on my body, Lord.
You can hear how it just tucks the vocals neatly into the music and it just sounds pristine, bro. I'm going to leave a link to a video here as well on how to do this from scratch. This is a very dope multiband compressor, but when you watch that video, you can actually apply the same technique to any multiband compressor that you have. It's the same process. And I've set the behavior here to opto, so it acts like an opto compressor, which means slower attack characteristics essentially. I'm not going to go through all the individual settings, but you can screenshot this if you want to copy this exact settings. But again, if you watch the video, you will know how to actually do this from scratch. It's very easy. And the next plugin on the vocal chain is the LA2A compressor. Now this is the final compressor in my compression series. The purpose of this compressor is to even out the performance of the vocals some more. This is an opto compressor, which means slow attack, very transparent, very smooth, and it's great for vocals. This has a fixed threshold and a fixed ratio, right? So the more you drive in your gain, the more compression so the more you increase the peak reduction, the more compression you're gonna get, and then you can add makeup gain. But personally, I don't necessarily do gain matching when I'm using this compressor. I just get the amount of reduction I want, and then I add the amount of gain that I want. That's how I like to use it. Let's see what we're doing in terms of gain reduction.
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head. Food on my table, clothes on my body, Lord.
So we're doing anywhere between -3 to -7 dB of gain reduction, which sounds great. It just gives the vocal a lot of body and presence. This is a very dope compressor. And as you can see, this is a universal audio version of this compressor as well. The Waves also has theirs in case you don't have the UAD one. All right. And the last plugin on my vocal chain before we go into the time-based effects is the DSR. Now this is an SPL DSR by Plugin Alliance. Very nice, transparent DSR, very smooth. And I'm using this to just smoothen up the high end a little bit, right? Make sure everything sounds pleasing. Personally, this is what I like to use to control how bright or warm the vocal sound, because I might be done mixing and the artist might be like, hey man, I want the vocals to sound a bit warmer. All I have to do is just dial up the S reduction essentially.
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head.
But if they want me to dial it down a little bit, all I have to do is come here and just
from the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head. Food on my table.
So you can hear how easily I can just control the warmth of my vocal after I've, done the main parts of the mix. So going back to my multiband compressor, my EQ, this just does it for me at the end of the day. Well, one more thing you will notice is the fact that I've set this to mid side. So I'm essentially focusing the de-essing on the mids, which means I'm focusing the de-essing on the high mids / some parts of the low mids essentially. That's very important to make sure I'm not making the vocals dull. And from here, we're going to go back to time-based effect. This is very straightforward. I do have 3 buses for my time-based effect. I have the room reverb, I have the main reverb, and I have the stereo delay. And for the room reverb, I'm using a very short reverb. I like the pure plate by UAD. It's a very, very great sounding room reverb. The shortest reverb time, shortest pre-delay time. This actually has a low cut, so I've set that to 180. So it's just gonna cut everything below 180. Then for the main reverb, I am using the H reverb. I'm sure everybody knows this reverb by now. It's a very, very nice sounding reverb. And also, if you like to buy any of these Waves plugins, I'm going to leave a link below that you can use. When you use that link, you support me and you get yourself some very cheap, amazing plugins to work with, because they are currently doing a lot of sales, up to 95% off on plugins. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you need to go and check it out. I'm going to leave the link below. All right, so let's move on. And then for the stereo delay, I am using the comeback kit by Baby Audio. This is a very nice, straightforward delay to use. I've set the delay to quarter note, straight, and ping pong. So which means the delay is going from right to left.
From the shoes on my feet to the roof over my head.
Right, so you get that ping pong sound essentially. All of the amount of reverb and delay is just, based on personal taste. This is something you have to do with your discretion and also agree with the artist. But for reggae music, you usually hear a lot of reverb. That's why we have a decent amount of reverb, although the delay is very, very low for this record, except for when the delay throws come in to highlight those parts that we want to highlight within the record. That's that. So let's go over to the background vocals. This was actually a lot of fun to work on. Crazy. So what I'm doing with the vocal is still the same bus processing, right? Like I did with the lead. Some gain staging here to create headroom. I'm using the Waves tune to tune these vocals. The Wave tune is actually very, very good for singers. So that's what I'm using here. I'm also going to leave a link to a video on how to use the Wave tunes in case you don't know how to. I just did one recently. I'm going to leave a link there as well. So everything is going to the vocal bus. The first set of background vocals you just heard, this ones. You're going straight to the ad-lib vocal bus, and the processing is, kind of sort of similar to the lead vocals, but obviously very different in some ways because there are backup vocals. For example, if you look at the compression, we're getting about -3 dB of gain reduction there. And for the EQ, you can see that we're doing some more cuts in the low mids than we did for the lead vocals. Tiny adjustments here and there. And then for the time-based effects, I have the room reverb as well, but I'm using a much bigger reverb for the background vocals. This is going to my very big reverb bus, which has the Valhalla vintage verb. All right. But that's not all actually, because I'm combining both the Valhalla vintage verb and the neo verb to create the reverb sound you're hearing for this vocal. So essentially, I'm using 2 different reverb to kind of create the sound that you're hearing for this background vocals. And then I have one last bus here, which is going to... And then I have one last send here, which is going to my chorus bus. Now, the chorus bus just has the Doubler effects plugin here to increase the stereo width of the background vocals. And as you can see, I've turned down the middle channel. So whatever I send to that bus is essentially only staying at the very extreme ends. I'm sending a decent amount to that bus, as you can see here. I'm doing about -9 dB there. So that's it for this background sounds, okay? But for the main, I guess you can call this the main background vocals.
Life.
It's the little things.
Yeah, man.
So these background vocals are playing exactly the same time as the lead vocals.
Give thanks, give thanks, give thanks for the gift of life. It's the little things.
Now there's a very nice simple trick that I'm using to make sure that everybody kind of have their space. The lead vocals is still punching, the background vocals is still doing its thing. So let me show you what I'm doing there. I've routed all these background vocals to my background summing bus. That's this first bus here. So the first thing they hit when they get to this bus is this multi-band compressor, and I'm doing multi-band compression from 3K up to 6K. I've essentially set this to a very fast attack, very slow release, and I've set the ratio to 2:1, so not a lot of compression. But what this is essentially doing is placing the background vocals beneath the lead vocals, because this frequency range is where you get the most clarity in your vocals. So let's listen to that.
Give thanks.
You can see.
Give thanks. Give thanks for the gift of life. It's the little things.
You can see that whenever the background vocals are playing, the multi-band compressor is ducking that frequency range to make sure the lead vocal is constantly up top. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's what I'm doing there first before I go into the main background vocal bus. Again, the same process. The EQing is just a little bit different from the lead vocals, and the multi-band compression as well, just a little bit different from the lead vocals. And same with the compression actually. And then I also have this de-esser here to control the warmth of the vocals. I think I'm doing the same here as well. Yeah, so that's essentially everything I've done in terms of mixing for this record. Now from here we're going to go over to my master bus. What I like to do with my mix is sort of what you call digital summing, right? So I have all the drums summed up to the drum bus, bass to the bass, melodies to the melodies, and vocals, you know, within all the vocal bus. But all of the instrumental aux tracks will also be summed up into the beat aux track, and all the vocal effects and everything will be summed up into the vocal aux track. And if I wanted to do some more processing to just the beat or just the vocals, this is exactly where I'll do it.
Give thanks. Give thanks for the gift of life. It's the little thing.
Yeah, but I didn't need to do anything here. And if you look down here, what you notice is I have some VCA tracks as well. For me, this is actually something I think is very important, and I use it towards the end of my mix. So what I do with this is just to adjust the level of all the groups that make up this record. For example, if I need to pull down the melodies just a little bit, I'll pull it down, and this will affect all of the melodies. But usually if you are doing any adjustment to the levels here, you have to come back to your bus and also check your compression and make sure everything sounds great. And also this is very good for when I'm doing my final deliverables. For example, if I want to export the song by the time I'm done, I just click solo to export instrumental, solo to export vox, mute the lead to export to PA track. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is actually very useful in my opinion. And if you buy my Pro Tools mixing and mastering template, all of this is laid out. You have 3 vocal presets, you have 1 mastering preset, you have all the VCAs, everything is laid out for you. So let's look at the mastering chain real quick and see what we're doing. Now the very first plugin here on the mastering chain is the VU meter. All right, this is just to check our levels, you know.
Give thanks. Give thanks. Give thanks.
You know, just to make sure we're not just resting on the red. Usually I like to target 0, but sometimes, as you can see,
Give thanks. Give thanks.
sometimes I might go above it, you know, but the most important thing is use your ears. So the record sounds good, it sounds good. And I have decent headroom for the rest of my mastering. So let's move on. The next plugin here is the Ozone 11. Now this is where I get to fix some issues within the overall mix and also just do the stereo imaging. So I have 2 EQs here. I have a dynamic EQ and then another EQ and then the stereo imager. Now with the dynamic EQ, you can see that I'm doing some cuts, but if you notice, I've also set this to mid side, right? So I'm only doing cuts on the mids, not on the sides. So
Give thanks.
So I'm taming some frequencies around 293 Hertz. Here, this is 530. Ooh, that one is sharp. You know, just taming some resonant frequencies from the overall mix in general. And then when you come to the next EQ, I'm doing a boost around 60 Hertz, just 1 dB to just add punch to that low end in general. This is actually something I do consistently on every record that I mix, except it's not needed. But I can tell you that 90% of the time I do this. You know, just a slight boost there. And then this is the stereo imager. This is my favorite stereo imager to use because you can actually split the bands. You have 4 crossover points to work with. 8K and up for air. 1.8K up to 8K for that clarity. I mean, essentially that's the high mid. 102 up to 1.8K. That's the low mid essentially. And then you have the low frequencies. So like I said, I like this because you can adjust the stereo width of your record at different frequency range, which is great. So as you can see, I'm doing the most stereo spread from 8K and up, and then just a little bit around 1.8K to 8K. I like to leave the low mids just the way I've done them from the record. If I needed to do any stereo spread around the low mid, I usually would do it from the mix itself with that particular instrument. For the low frequencies, I don't spread those at all. As a matter of fact, I make it narrow. I make it into a mono sound. That way you get a lot more punch in your low end. So as you can see, keeping everything below 100 Hz mono. Very important.
Give thanks, give thanks, give thanks for the gift of life.
Now the next plugin on the mastering chain is the SPL PQ. This is my favorite EQ for mastering right now. I've set this to left and right. You can actually set this to mid side if you wanted to. Okay, so what I'm doing here, boost around 2 dB.
Give thanks.
Around 61 Hz, yeah. Tighter Q. And then for the low frequency, I'm doing a cut around 205 Hz up to -1 dB. You know, very, very little adjustment because this is mastering, right? And for the mid frequency, we're doing a cut up to -1 dB around 735 Hz and a much tighter Q here, as you can see. And then for the high mid frequency, cut as well up to -1 dB around 1800 Hz, also a very, very tight Q. And then for the high frequency, we're doing a boost up to 2 dB around 18 kilohertz. All right, and this is a much wider Q. Yeah, this is actually a very, very nice EQ for mastering. It sounds very, very good. You know what, let me know in the comment section below if you want me to do a video on how this plugin actually works. It's actually a very dope EQ. And then the next plugin on the mastering chain is the XPL Ion. This is my favorite mastering compressor right now, man. It sounds really good.
Give thanks, give thanks, give.
Very slow attack because we need the transit to cut through. Very fast release. And then we're doing up to 1 dB of gain reduction just to glue the sound together. I've set the rectifier to silicon. The high pass filter, I've set that to 90 Hz. So which means the compressor is not going to react to any frequency below 90 Hz. I'm not doing anything with the mono maker. I'm not doing anything with the stereo width. Or neither am I doing parallel compression. There's also something here though. This is called the air bass. This is a very, very important feature in this compressor if you ask me. Just add some crazy amount of smooth bass to your whole record. Let me show you what it does. So this is without the air bass.
Give thanks, give thanks.
So with the air bass,
Give thanks, give thanks, give thanks.
you can hear how it just makes the low end sound a bit thicker. Let me do it again. Before,
Give thanks,
after.
give thanks,
You can hear that.
give thanks
Before.
for the gift of life. It's the little things. It's the little thing.
Yo, it's crazy. And then the next plugin on my mastering chain is the black box for that juicy saturation. So first of all, I've set this to flat, so the saturation is going across the whole frequency range. Saturation to 50%, pentode is 50%, going into the triode, which is also at 50%. And I'm also using the air from this plugin, and I've set that to 45%. But if you look at the mix here, you can see that I'm doing a bit of parallel processing. I've set the mix to 50%, so I have a bit of the, you can say, dry signal going through as well as the saturated signal at the same time. Let's do a bypass so we can hear the difference that this plugin is making to the record. So without it,
Give thanks, give thanks, give thanks.
and then with the plugin.
Give thanks, give thanks, give thanks for the gift of life.
In my opinion, you get a very good saturation across the entire record. The bass sounds thicker and the high frequency sounds lush and it shines. It's just like, oh, smooth. You know what I'm saying? It's a very, very nice plugin. And then the next plugin on my mastering chain is the IM Pusher, but I'm mostly just using this plugin for the clip function. And I've set the clip to 4 dB here. I think I'm doing up to -3 dB of gain reduction with the clipper. And I'm also doing a bit of boost around the mid frequencies with their magic knob up to, I don't know, what's that? We can call that maybe 36 dB. I don't know, but it sounds good. It does this thing. And then I'm doing a boost on the low up to 2 dB around 37 Hz just to add some extra punch to the low end. And then the last plugin on my mastering chain is the Newfound Gold Elevate. This is an amazing limiter, man. It sounds very, very good, especially with this transient emphasis. You get like a lot of snap in your record.
Give thanks, give thanks, give thanks for the gift of life. It's the little things.
Right, so as you can see, I'm doing up to -5 dB of gain reduction here. I've set the ceiling to -0.5. Transient emphasis is at 60%. This plugin also comes with its own clipper, but since I'm already doing clipping with the IM Pusher, I'm not doing that here. I'm just doing 4 dB of gain with the limiter. This limiter also has an EQ, by the way. Look, so let's say I'm limiting the record and I realize I'm losing some low frequency information. I can actually come here and, you know, boost if I wanted to. Is that not crazy? It's a very, very dope limiter, man. And I feel like it has gone on every song I've mixed in the past couple of months, which is about 50 songs or more, actually. It's crazy. All right, so that's everything we've done for this record. And I hope you got something, at least, even if it's one. And if you did, make sure you leave me a like and subscribe if you've not. And if you want to book my services for mixing and mastering, I'm going to leave a link below to the engineers page so you can book me. Or you can hit me up on Instagram at BennyMacaulayDB. But you should actually book me on engineers.com right now because I'm doing a discount. You get up to 60% off when you use the code Black Friday 60 at checkout. And if you'd like to buy my vocal and mastering preset for Pro Tools and Logic and FL Studio, I'm going to leave a link below as well. And if you'd like to copy my Pro Tools mixing and mastering template, I'm going to leave a link below as well. And remember, I'm going to leave a link below for this record so you can check it out. So that's going to be for now, man. I shall see you on the next one. Benny Macaulay out.
Give thanks, give thanks, give thanks from the bottom of your heart.
It's the little things.
Me tell you.
It's the little things.
Take 2, let's go. This is the second time I'm recording this whole video because for some reason the audio interface tripped and the recording I was doing inside Luna did not save. So which means we have to start all over again after recording for like 40 minutes, bro. All right, anyways, let's go. Hype.